In this episode, we speak with Anthony Abbatiello, partner and workforce transformation practice leader at PwC. Anthony brings deep expertise in human capital strategy, leading PwC's efforts in workforce transformation and helping clients prepare for the future by driving innovation in talent strategy, HR transformation, behavioral change, and rewards and well-being. Anthony was recognized as one of the top 25 human capital consultants and leaders of 2024. PwC is a global professional services network with more than 370,000 people in 149 countries, helping organizations build and sustain momentum across audit, tax, legal, and consulting services. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Same here. Thanks for having me.
I feel like I'm speaking to a true industry veteran in that you've had leadership positions at the top consulting firms. Now you're with PwC in workforce transformation. Maybe to kick off for the benefit of our audience, you can tell us about what you're focused on most within, kind of workforce transformation, as well as the types of clients you're particularly involved with.
Sure. When you say veteran, gosh, it makes me feel old, but I will take it because it's a long-standing passion of mine, the human capital space. So at PwC, I lead our workforce transformation practice, which is our end-to-end human capital consulting business, where we focus mainly on advising the HR function around digital and, reinvention and reimagination, working cross transformations and with clients around organizational change, talent transformation, and driving culture, going deep into the rewards and benefits worlds around executive compensation, pension, retirement, everything about how we incent and manage performance for the workforce. And then finally, in the age of AI, bringing agentic AI, the future of work, analytics, data around the workforce to our clients to enable them for better decision-making. That's the practice. I say for me personally, I probably lean in the most in the last decade around executive development, succession, CEO transition, and largely those types of, leadership development or leadership interventions that are helping to drive the overall strategy and vision for our client organizations. And I would say in the practice, I always joke and say there's probably not a client we don't serve, meaning not that we serve every company on the planet, but there are small family-owned businesses, startups, private asset management companies, up to, the Fortune 10, large global, publicly traded, cross-sector, cross-industry type of organizations that we help. Because if you take that definition I was just giving around the practice, it's sort of you touch every part of our client's organization.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something within the scope of the work you do in the rewards and incentives, compensation. And it's always a tricky part of hiring someone and keeping them enthused about their role. And I feel like it's a dynamic situation. It's almost continuous, like where workers are always thinking, regardless of what level they're at, they're always thinking, am I getting compensated appropriately? Are there situations where, or maybe industries where folks are even more attuned to where they really need to get this right? Like they need to compensate appropriately, their labor force.
We are really seeing a dynamic shift around incentives. And, so I look at incentive and compensation in both how we're paying people to the market relative to the market and how we're incentivizing the workforce. What's very clear, we launched a massive piece of research last year called Workforce Radar, and it had 5 signals. The first signal was around, are you a talent magnet or a talent factory? And we started that in saying, You focus more on how you're attracting, you focus more on how you're developing. What we
Mm.
found in the research is to be successful in the next 3 years, because that's the sort of the longitudinal study, is you have to be both. And so we find that most organizations are looking at both right now. So how are we relative to the market and attracting in rewards versus the opportunities that we're giving them inside? And so it is a dynamic generation. Obviously, you could get into different industry sectors right now that are being disrupted by AI
Mhm.
or chip manufacturers, right? Certainly they're at the forefront of changing how they want to compensate. But our point still remains that the job architecture and the skills architecture together will drive the better decision making and results around what's the best way to pay to compensate a certain job relative to the skills it requires, and in which situations is development part of that overall reward. Because what we see is for some individuals who make over $75,000 a year, upskilling development is a higher priority sometimes than necessarily a base compensation increase.
Mhm. One question that I immediately thought of when this conversation was coming up was, what's different about PwC versus the other firms you've worked at or other firms in the space?
Yeah, and I've had experience at, a few, and I think what is most different about PwC and our practice, we come at this from the intersection of industry, sector, and human capital expertise. So, we always say that human-led and tech-powered is the space where we sit most. Our clients choose to work with us in the human capital space. Mainly, sure, we have great expertise and great quals and leading edge solutions, certainly as a foundation. And we really look at everything from the perspective of the worker. So the integration that we have around the breadth of being able to look at the HR function and understand what are the employee needs and coming at that from every angle, because it isn't just about transforming the function and implementing a new human capital management cloud solution. It's also looking about how is that going to change the worker experience, and are there things like skills and job architecture, compensation, rewards, benefits, so forth, that could enhance that experience. I think
Mhm.
when you look at that through that lens, we present a more differentiated advice and capability to our clients that's still supported by the financial outcomes and expertise that the brand of PwC delivers always. And I think that piece gives us a way in which we're not just looking at how do we get to the client outcome? How do we get to the client outcome with a real return on investment and the focus around that quality and execution?
Is there a situation or a client project that you worked on that you're particularly proud of that really showcases how you helped the worker, how you helped the human who is living day in and day out within this corporation and you improve their overall experience, well-being, career trajectory, et cetera?
We have a tech client that we've worked with that is really about defining the agentic AI transformation for the HR function. And what this client was looking to do was understand how they change their operating model. And in that process, what we were really recommending was not just changing the operating model and the delivery of capacity across the function, is how do you introduce agentic AI into that process and ultimately creating a better employee worker experience. So within this client, it was defining the overall operating model, looking at how agentic AI would create a better delivery for HR services to the worker, and at the same time, redesigning and bringing in that new experience from the worker lens, how they would interact with HR in the future. And that together for me was the great benefit of the PwC capability, because we're bringing in the lens around the HR model. We're bringing the lens around agentic AI and enabling the future of work. And we're also bringing in the lens of the worker experience, right? So how humans are at the helm and how that changes both the HR worker and the client worker in the business to be able to deliver at a higher productivity rate and have greater levels of engagement with the organization.
Mhm. Is there one or two things that you think most organizations could always use help optimizing? Most organizations and their HR function, it's almost like here's two quick things you can do to immediately, and I know this is going to sound like a stretch here because every organization is different and it can be complicated, but are there usually like a couple insights that you could provide to companies and say, like, think about these two things when you're building or even potentially evolving your organization?
It's hard to say two. I typically would have five, but I'll pick two of the real ones right now. The first is the concept of the workforce balance sheet, which is, really understanding the true cost to deliver around the workforce and what are the levers. And this is going beyond just HR, it's like not just the cost of HR, but your labor cost, your compensation, your benefit plan programs, your taxation rates, local jurisdictions, really getting a handle around the true balance sheet around your workforce and aligning that to worker preference. Do you always have the right benefit plans, programs, compensation, incentives that your workers need in order to deliver on your strategy, your vision, your raison d'etre? The second is real for today is just the focus around the intelligent enterprise. How are you bringing agentic AI, digital tools, hyperscaler technology to enhance the productivity and the experience for the worker? I think oftentimes organizations are mired in these large ERP transformations that are multi-year and not necessarily thinking always about what the experience is for the worker and how do we start to leapfrog some of these innovations. So just how do you enable and how are you delivering the intelligent enterprise today of the future?
That's great. This is a little bit of an aside, but I'm curious because I do talk to a lot of executives, and I like to ask this question just to get at kind of like a survey that I'm particularly curious about is what is typically success rate on hiring? I'm curious what you have seen, like in corporations that are always hiring new people, whether it's at the junior level, mid level, higher level. What would you say if you had to pin it to a certain percentage? What is the success rate on hiring good candidates that perform well and stay a while?
It's a different answer based on the type of role. It's different if I'm hiring a worker versus an executive. I just went into like individual contributor versus executive. On the executive side, I would say it's close to 50% of executives fail within their first 18 months, whether they're inside the company and promoted or coming from the outside. So I'd say it's probably about a 50%. I think it's like 49% right now. And then on the individual contributor, I think it's higher because we know like the skill base is different. So, I think you're probably close in that 65% range. And I think in both of them, what the X factor is really about the behavioral and cultural fit.
Mhm. We're heading into the tail end. I still have a few questions. One question gets to the, I guess, personal front. You went to Villanova, which is a fantastic school. And as I was hearing you talk about the emphasis in understanding the human experience within their working environment, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if there was any influence at all, like the things you learn in college, and particularly a place like Villanova, which I have very high regard for. Were there things you learned there that helped you in your career?
What a great question, and thank you for asking it. Villanova holds a very dear place in my heart, and I'm still involved in the university. So at Villanova, we have a saying of "Unitas Caritas Veritas," and it's a important distinction for us in how we look at the world, and I think it is something that is real for me, right? So obviously, Unitas is unity, Caritas is charity or selflessness, and Veritas is truth. And all of that together is something that you experience every day at Villanova, whether it is in the academic lens, the social lens, or in the spiritual lens as an Augustinian university. And for us at Villanova, I think that is something that was instilled with me. It's something that my parents instilled in me in terms of the community, that we're one community, that's the unity, that we care and love and take care of each other. And a lot of times, putting yourself second, and that we're truthful and honest with each other. And I think they're values of my family, and I think they are values of Villanova. I maybe didn't know that so acutely when I was there, but it is certainly something that has grown with me even into my professional career and adulthood.
One other question before we head into the last two. What is a piece of advice that you find yourself giving to CEOs to the extent you're involved with a CEO going into a new role? Is there some guidance that you typically find is helpful? Say it's like a new stretch role that this person is moving into.
Yes. So I give the same advice and structure, whether it's someone who's a first-time CEO or is, new into the organization. Looking at understanding and evaluating key things. One is, what is your legacy? What do you want to be known for when this is over? Two is priorities. What are the most important priorities, places for you to spend your time? The people that you have on your team, understand yourself, have self-awareness and vulnerability to know what you are really good at, what you are not good at, and make sure that you have the team around you that supports you to deliver in those areas. We say like work-ons versus workarounds. The workarounds are the people, and then the relationships. So what are the most important relationships and how would you rate yourself? Being very self-aware. And that's with, institutional investors, the board, communities, internal, external stakeholders, right? Your leaders, your key clients, whatever those key relationships are, just understand that and make sure that you get a handle around that in the first few months so that you're not thinking, hey, I'm taking us on a growth journey, but I'm failing to look at the very clear obstacles that are in front of me. And if you look at any CEO story where they have failed in that first year and a half, it typically was something that was right in front of them in their first 30, 60, 90 days, where had they paid attention to it, they may have been able to remove that obstacle to focus on, the real agenda.
Okay, last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
My mother, for sure. Not just a matriarch of a family. She was the nucleus of a extended family. I don't have kids, but she prioritized family. And I feel today the family, both relatives and friends and community, is so important to me. And that extends into my professional life. I always make sure that I'm with and around people that I enjoy with, but also that I'm taking care of and contributing back to their lives and their professions as well.
Excellent. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
I am working with the Generations Project right now, which is a not-for-profit organization that focuses on LGBTQ plus history and preserving that history. If you think about, in your elementary, grammar school, high school education, you learn about, world history and American history. There are certain pieces of history that we don't learn about. And I believe that is something really important. And history is something that's so important for youth. And the Generations Project is a storytelling community of people of all ages and backgrounds that focus on celebrating that LGBTQ plus history and sharing that through our own voices to ensure that those stories and lived experiences live on in the history and in the generations to come.
Excellent. Well, Anthony, I want to thank you again for taking the time. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. And I really appreciate being here. This has been a lot of fun and insightful.